but we wanted to kind of give you an update about the weather situation that's been going on since Friday. It's kind of been a tale of two areas. We've had Western North Carolina that's been inundated with flash flooding and even some strong thunderstorms. And then along the coast, it's not been too bad. But we're going to be here tonight to talk to you a little bit about what's going on, what has been going on over the past day or so, and then what to expect over the next day or so. First of all, I do want to let everyone know that there is a flash flood watch still in effect for portions of Western North Carolina, and I'll give you those county names for you. Here, the flash flood watch has been extended at least until 6 a.m. Monday morning. This could be extended later on. I know probably for the foothills it'll probably be extended. Some other areas maybe not so much. But in South Carolina, Cherokee, Greenville, Spartanburg counties, and York County, South Carolina is still under the flash flood watch. For North Carolina, you've got Alexander, Avery, Buncombe, Burke, Caldwell, Catawba, Cleveland, McDowell, Polk, Gaston, Rutherford, Henderson, Iredell, Lincoln, Mecklenburg, Mitchell, Polk, I think I already said Polk, but Transylvania and Yancey counties. And again, that's flash flood watch goes until 6 a.m. Monday morning. We have been experiencing a lot of heavy rain, and if you've been following along with us, we've been trying to give you up-to-date information. So here's what we have right now. There are 3 counties in Western North Carolina that are currently under a state of emergency, and that's Alexander, Caldwell, and Catawba counties. And those are all in the Western North Carolina area and what we call the Unifor area, the Catawba Valley area, another phrase that's used for these areas. And again, this is where we've seen most of the rainfall. We'll pull up those rainfall totals via Doppler radar in just a little bit. We'll even pull up some CoCross data to let you see some of the totals. But again, this area has seen the majority of rain. And as you can see there on the screen, we've got these rainfall totals up to date. And if you live anywhere between Caldwell, Catawba, Alexander, Burke, even portions of Lincoln and McDowell County, we've seen anywhere between 4 to 8 inches of rain. And there's actually been some locations that's registered more than that. So this location, obviously, we've seen a lot of heavy rain in relatively short amount of time. This started Friday night. Friday night was pretty bad for Catawba County. Some locations got over 6 inches of rain in little less than 12 hours. And then Saturday evening, we saw another round of heavy rain, and this was a little bit more widespread, where we saw up to 6-7 inches in Caldwell, Burke, and Alexander County, as well as Lincoln County. And in fact, in Lincoln County, we did have a confirmed accident on the road that unfortunately 3 folks passed away. They were driving down the road and either hydroplaned, or the road could even have been underwater at some portions. This was around a creek, and the car ended up upside down in the creek, and 3 fatalities did happen in Lincoln County. So this has been a deadly storm indeed. If you don't live in the Charlotte, Mecklenburg area, towards the Boone area in the Western North Carolina, you may have experienced some severe weather today. And yesterday, we saw numerous severe weather reports out of the Columbia area. In fact, this evening, there was a funnel cloud reported in the Columbia Forecast Office area. And yesterday, there was actually a confirmed EF0 tornado that touched down in southern Rutherford County. It was a really brief, quick spin up. It affected one little community, and kind of dissipated and went back into the sky. So there has been a severe weather element to this storm system as well. And this is all because of a upper level low pressure system that is slowly moving through the southeast. And when we call it upper level low pressure, it's what we call a cutoff flow. And mainly in weather, the jet stream drives weather from west to east, or north to south, or however the case may be. Well, this low pressure has been caught off of the jet stream, so it's meandering around the Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi area, and it's slowly migrating off to the east. There is a cold front draped over the Midwest and the Central Plains that eventually will pick up this low pressure and move it out of the area. But until then, we're going to see another night of rainfall. And James, I know you're going through graphics. Maybe we can pull up the radar and kind of show folks where the precipitation is falling right now. We do have this scenario of kind of a miniature cold air damming situation. And it's not really cold outside, it's very warm and humid, but there's just enough high pressure that we're banking that up against the mountains. And that cold front, or the warm front, is actually starting to move into North Carolina. It's currently situated over the South Carolina North Carolina line, and it is starting to move up into western North Carolina. And James, I know you earlier, you were traveling back from Georgia and you caught some of that heavy rain in the Charlotte area. And now that heavy rain is starting to move into, well, western North Carolina, where we don't really need to see any more of this heavy rain. So, unfortunately, another night of some heavy rain, potentially some flash flood warnings issued tonight. Was able to speak with Josh Palmer, the hydrologist at the National Weather Service in Greenville Spartanburg. And right now, the threshold for flash flood warnings for the Unifor area is anywhere between 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch of rain in 1 hour. So that can be easily achieved with as moist and damp as the atmosphere is tonight. It's a very tropical setup. So again, those flash flood warnings could be issued tonight. And speaking of that, you can see we do have a few flood warnings out for the area, and most of that in Caldwell, Burke, Alexander, Catawba, and Watauga County. And then we also have some flood warnings down in the Charlotte area, Gastonia, Gaston County, and the Charlotte-Mecklenburg area. And we do have some river gauges that we are monitoring. And there's one on Mountain Island Lake, which is on the northern part of the Charlotte, uptown Charlotte area. And it is quickly rising from all this runoff of the weather that has produced this heavy rain in the foothills. And we've seen a sharp increase in the river flood gauges that we monitor. And in fact, it is approaching record high levels. At last checked around 8 o'clock, that rain gauge, or that river gauge, was up to 104.42 feet. And the record is 105.1 feet. So you can kind of see that graphic here on the screen. We are see that sharp rise in the water levels, and this is pretty significant rise in just a short amount of time. So if you know folks who live along the Catawba River near Lake Norman, you're not already established contact with them, you may want to give them a call or a text and just let them know, hey, you need to be mindful of the changing conditions tonight. So, James, I'll bring you in, as you have also been following this, and this has been a pretty significant flood event, and it kind of brings back, we normally don't see flood events like this unless they're associated with tropical systems, but it just goes to show folks that we don't have to have a tropical system to move in here to have these heavy rains and flash flooding scenarios.
Yeah, that's a good point, Scotty, because you and I were talking heading into the weekend whether or not this was going to be reminiscent of Tropical Storm Alberto, which you'll recall this time last year caused that evacuation just north of Marion because of the potential dam breach. So it is a good reminder that not only will we see situations like that unfold possibly during tropical scenarios, but also during non-tropical scenarios, because this is in no way a tropical event. But second to that point, during my Facebook Live earlier today here in South Charlotte, when we had that heavy band of rain moving through, I actually took the opportunity to remind folks that you don't need to only take action in severe weather. And by that I mean it doesn't have to be a severe thunderstorm for it to be highly impactful, because we were looking at all of that rain coming down very quickly, and it was not a severe thunderstorm. A severe thunderstorm means it has damaging wind or hail, and here we are just with buckets of rain falling. And I mentioned during that broadcast that I was traveling this weekend, I'm reaching forward here, with a weather radio, because had I been driving and got caught in heavy rain just like that, I wanted a way to get flash flood warnings. And flash flood warnings will come to your cell phone through the wireless emergency alert system. But the way they stand right now, you really only get one line or two lines, and that's really hard to kind of decipher while you're driving. So I actually had my portable weather radio with me, Scotty, as I was driving Interstate 85 between Charlotte and Georgia and then back again, so that had I encountered some flash flooding, I would have had that bulletin read to me by NOAA Weather Radio. Scotty?
That's a great point, James, and something that I was telling folks last night, and even that applies to tonight if you live in the Burke, Caldwell, Alexander, Catawba County areas. If your travels take you anywhere near a stream or a creek, if you can avoid those areas tonight, it's nighttime now. It's really hard to see, and especially if water's flowing over the roadways, it's very dangerous. So if you can avoid traveling over areas that are surrounded by creeks or river or streams or even now rivers, as we're starting to see a lot of rivers rise, if you can find another way home, that would probably be a great idea. But we want to be mindful that if there are roadblocks, and there's been several road closures in the foothills of North Carolina, those road barriers, those blockades, they're up for a reason. And it mostly means that the road is unsafe to travel on. We've seen numerous sinkholes open up over the past 24 hours here in the foothills just because of the rain and the earth giving way. We've seen mudslides and dirt, debris flows. So if those roads are blocked, there's a reason why. So please do not drive around these barricades. We say it all the time, turn around, don't drown. And unfortunately, we've already seen 3 deaths, and we don't want to see any more. So those blockades and road closure signs are up for reasons. So do not go around them. And if you do go around them and then you get stuck, not only is your life in jeopardy, the folks in your car's life's in jeopardy, but also those folks who are having to come out and rescue you, you're putting their lives in jeopardy too. So definitely do not go around any blocked roads. And just find an alternate way to get where you're going. And if you don't have to be out tonight, we encourage you just to stay inside. We did see earlier, there you can see a picture that I snapped from this morning of a road closure here close to my house. And that's the Johns River Loop. And I will tell you now that that pavement you see no longer exists. That's all underwater as the Johns River is continuing to rise here in Burke County. And it's about to reach 24 feet, which would be major flood stage. And it's only been a few times that we've seen that. But to kind of get back to the point of those roadblocks and stuff like that, just don't travel around them. Tonight, it's not a good night to be out traveling. I will say Catawba County schools are closed tomorrow due to flooding. Not only is the roads unsafe, but there's several schools that have received water damage from this, as well as Newton Conover City schools. They are on a 2-hour delay just because of the flooding situation. So some schools are already out for summer, but there's a few counties that are continuing through the next few days. So at least for Catawba County, there will be no school tomorrow. So just a very dangerous day. As we look through tonight, we're going to see those scattered showers as James was showing you the radar earlier. We could see another round of rain tonight from Charlotte, Asheville, Greenville, South Carolina, up into the foothills and mountains. And then tomorrow, another round of rain possible. Thankfully, it looks like we may not see those heavy rainfall amounts that we saw on Saturday and Friday night and Saturday night. But right now, any rain is unneeded in these areas. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we're going to have a cold front move through the area Tuesday into Wednesday, and it'll kind of knock all of this moisture out. And James, we like to joke off camera that we can't do weather normal here in the Carolinas. We go from one extreme to the other. We just went through I think it was 3 weeks without measurable rainfall, and now we've had too much rainfall. And that just seems how it goes around here. But I'm very thankful that we did have that dry span, because could you imagine what it would be like if it had just been average in rain and we'd had some bigger issues. Not that we've not already had big issues, but these issues would have become bigger and bigger if we'd had rainfall in the last couple of weeks.
I think there's two things in particular, a little bit of luck and a little bit of talent. The luck being that although it was dry and we were starting to see that drought monitor tick up, especially in portions of South Carolina, that actually then allowed us to have some excess ability in the ground soil to soak up a lot of this rain. Was it enough? No, but it could have been worse. The other thing that, as our own Chris Jackson was pointing out as we headed into the weekend, the folks who were in charge of water management were trying to lower as best as they could the lakes and the reserves so that as all of this water fell and then began to run downstream, we weren't starting already in an elevated mark. They tried to bring it down as a precautionary measure, and that's a little bit, I think, of the talent that plays into this. And Scotty, I also want to mention, as we get ready here to pop radar back up on the screen, that this has really have been a situation where, yeah, you can track some of this rain on radar, but in the grand scheme of things, hours on out, the system itself is not one that we're just tracking. This is rain that is literally generating over the region, especially with that slope there in western North Carolina. So as people are looking at their own radar apps, keep in mind, just because there isn't something there now doesn't mean there won't be something there later. Scotty?
Yeah, and you can see in these last few frames, especially over Charlotte, up into York County and Lancaster County, you can really see these cells start to blossom as they come into the Charlotte area. And what's happening is we got more of a south-southeast flow, and as that rain and those cells continue to move into the foothills, we have that mountain, and the mountains create extra lift. And when we get that extra lift, it's kind of like wringing out a sponge. It's able to wring out all the available moisture in these cells, and that's why we've seen that heavy rain set up in the foothills. And it's another night of this going to happen. And I'm really not. I'm really concerned about that line, James, that we were talking about earlier. There,
Yeah,
just moving.
this right on in here
Yeah, that
concerns
line
me a
right
bit.
there.
Again, this is not something that when I say concerns us a bit, I'm waiting for a severe thunderstorm warning. I'm not. I'm not anticipating hail necessarily or wind damage with this, but that's very concentrated and strong. And if we do a little now casting, because that's the situation we're in here. If I just look at the rainfall that it dropped over the course of the last hour, let's see if the radar will cooperate here. It looks like half an inch, maybe in some places. We're very close to this radar site. But my point is, and as you know, if we bring another quarter inch, half inch, another inch of rain into the already flooded, saturated foothills, we don't need any more at this point. Thank you for
Yeah.
helping alleviate the drought. We're done now for a little while, I think.
Yeah, I think we could go another 3 or 4 weeks and we'd be perfectly fine. But one worrisome thing, James, if we can scroll off that radar for just a second, is that those cells that are over Charlotte, this is starting to congeal into a line. If you put the radar in motion, you can kind of see this
Oop,
line
sorry.
beginning to develop from Union County into Mecklenburg County, and it's going to attach onto that line of storms that are moving into Rutherford and Polk County, and this is just going to continue to move to the northwest, and that's going to be
Yep.
going over locations that just don't need any rainfall. And
Which
so,
is a perfect example of what we were just talking about, because if I manually roll this back to even just 9:30, let's say you're in Lincoln County, Lincolnton, and you were looking downstream, there's nothing here. We'll be fine. 5, 10, 15 minutes later, oh, there's rain coming. Here it comes now. And that
yep.
literally was just 45 minutes worth of advancing the radar.
And for those folks who you may be a little weather savvy, and those who may not, as we see these orange and red colors develop in these cells, that's indicating heavy rain. And sometimes in this setup, the radar doesn't do justice with what's actually falling out of the sky. And James could probably attest to that earlier as he did the Facebook Live, as you guys saw him there in the Charlotte area. The returns were more of a green, yellow, maybe a little hint of orange, but it was actually heavy rain. And this is a tropical environment that we're in. And this is not a tropical system, but when I say tropical environment, when you go to the beach or something along the coastal plain and you get outside at night and it's all muggy feeling, well, that's the same exact feeling as we've got here in the Carolinas. There's just so much moisture in the air right now that it doesn't take much to wring all of that moisture out. And so you may see the greens and yellows, but that could actually be more intense rainfall than what the radar is showing. And that happens sometimes in these setups. So right now, we're looking at some of the USGS cams in Charlotte, and as we get James, you live in Charlotte. It seems like there may be more pavement than grass there in some locations. And all of that heavy rainfall and runoff, it doesn't take much to see those streams and creeks elevate in the Charlotte area.
That's what led me to do the Facebook Live earlier, because for the most part, this has been a very significant event for the foothills, as you know, Scotty, where you are in Burke County. You've been seeing it firsthand, and we can actually see it if I go and I'm just going to pop. You're going to be on double box here for a second, Scotty, but on the left-hand side of your screen, viewers, you can see all of the storm reports from this weekend, and they're all almost exclusively concentrated in the foothills. We have one over towards Greensboro, but I mean that's almost it. We have again a couple down towards Aiken and Columbia, but you can clearly see where the cluster is. I did that Facebook Live earlier because Charlotte, Mecklenburg County Population Center is very much still in this flash flood watch as we go through tonight, and as we're seeing this on radar generate over the Charlotte area, we'll just have to be mindful. I'm not trying to instill fear in anybody, but we just have to be mindful, which is why when I go to bed tonight, I'm going to keep this on because if there's a flash flood warning in the middle of the night, I may want to get up and take action, especially if I live in a low-lying area. Scotty?
Yeah, and James, honestly, looking at those radar returns, I would not be surprised to see some flash flood warnings or at least flood advisories issued for some locations. I'm going to
Because
pop
keep in
up.
mind, and I'm sorry I'm cutting you off, keep in
Yeah,
mind Mountain Island Lake that we were just talking about, that existing flood warning is right on in here between
yeah.
Lake Norman and Mountain Island right there in that Gaston County line. So yeah, we've got more rain moving in.
And James, that's one thing that we haven't hit on yet, that the flood threat, even when this rain starts to dissipate and get out of here on Tuesday and Wednesday, the residual main stem river flooding will continue for the next week or so as it moves through North Carolina and then eventually down to South Carolina. We see this all the time during the tropical season, where we see these river flood warnings extend for weeks and weeks after the rain has fallen. Now, I'm not saying that we'll see weeks and weeks of river flood warnings this go around, but we could see river flood warnings continue through the weekend for some locations as this water slowly kind of recedes back into the bank. So definitely a dangerous situation in Western North Carolina. There's one more day tomorrow before we start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's just safe to say if you don't have to be out tonight, stay indoors. And if you do come across any roadways, and one other point that I was making last night that I have it tonight is there's a lot of rural areas in these counties where the county sheriff's departments, police departments, fire and rescue squads, they're smaller in organizations, so they may not be at all the roads that are flooded. So you may come across a country road that has water flowing over it and there's no cones up, and it's just because these counties are so big and the workforce is so small. So it's a good idea if you see any water crossing any roadways, even if there's not a barricade up, just turn around. It's not worth getting into. And James has got the hazardous weather outlook in it. That red area kind of defines the area of concern for tomorrow. That
This is
is a
actually tonight, Scotty. So let me go ahead
okay.
and
That is
advance to
time. Yeah,
tomorrow because I was
yeah.
actually, and you're going to about to say it. The threat tomorrow goes down, but it's not zero.
Right, yeah. Tomorrow, this is, I believe this is the slight or enhanced area of heavy rain, and so that still shows you there's kind of like raise your eyebrow. We need to pay attention to tomorrow. Then as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday, those heavy rain concerns go away little by little. But again, the flooding concern is first and foremost our top concern tonight, and it's something we're going to continue to watch through tonight and through this week.
Yeah, one last look here. I think as we begin to wrap up this special with you on this Sunday night, that we do have this flash flood watch that extends from the Interstate 85 corridor from Greenville, Spartanburg into Charlotte and areas north across the foothills and even into mountains. This particular map, you're not highlighted, but Boone, Jefferson, you're in this as well too, all the way up to that Virginia line. So again, stay weather aware tonight through tomorrow and don't cross flooded roadways. Scotty?
Yeah, James, the National Weather Service in Greenville, Spartanburg, they just tweeted out this, and I want to read it to you. We are monitoring bands of moderate to heavy rain potentially setting up over the Interstate 26 corridor near the escarpment of the Blue Ridge. Also be on the lookout for patchy fog. If traveling tonight, slow down if encountering reduced visibility, and watch out for water going over roadways. So again, that was that band of rain we were talking about a little bit earlier. And I'll promise you, as James can attest to, when you get under these heavy rain bands, the visibility goes down in a big way. So
that was what led to the
just
opportunity before to do that Facebook Live. I wasn't planning on doing a Facebook Live, but I pulled the car over because I couldn't see where I was going, pulled into a parking lot.
Yeah. So these heavy rain cells will definitely do that. So again, we'll continue to be here and provide information as it is needed. And we hope that you all have a safe night. If you have any storm pictures, any flood pictures, and you can do it safely, we'd love to see them. You can send them to us on our social media platforms, Facebook or on our Twitter page. And you can keep up with the latest by downloading our podcast on Apple Podcasts. James, you know more about this than I do. There's so many outlets. We have
We're
Apple
getting to the point now where
Podcasts.
we can just say find us in your favorite podcast platform, but you can take the
Yeah,
audio version of our show and our updates with you on platforms, including now Spotify.
yeah. So you can do that, and I believe we're going to continue running our stream, our 24-hour stream. So you will probably see this populate sometime throughout the night. But this is just an update we wanted to give you on this storm system. So James, if you don't have anything else, we'll kind of wrap up here as we're looking at Marion, North Carolina. You can see the rain is starting to fall up in McDowell County, and we will continue to watch this heavy rain as it falls in the mountains and the foothills in the western Piedmont of North Carolina. Please be alert tonight for rapidly changing weather conditions. If you do live in a flood-prone area, make sure that you have your weather radio on, or at least your cell phone on, so that way if a flash flood warning is issued for your area, it will wake you with the EAS alert, or those weather apps as well will send a notification to your phone. And we'll be here with you with the Carolina Weather Group. We'll be streaming all night long. And if any bad weather exists or anything that is life-threatening, we will jump back on here. But we all hope you have a great rest of the evening. Stay safe out there, and we'll continue to watch this flash flood threat for North and South Carolina.